What up, y'all? It's your boy Casino ATX. And I've been doing these little talks here, I guess, all month long. Normally I do them as lives, but this one I recorded because, if you're interested, I really want you to really listen to everything I'm saying, and then you can comment. I didn't want to do it as a live because I wanted to make sure I got all my points out across on this one. Usually I just talk about, advice and tips for musicians and stuff like that, but it's been like a debate I've been, seeing online and on Instagram and Facebook and everything, and it's kind of been, it's nothing new, but it's been like reignited with some rappers out of the Texas scene here, and basically that debate is who can and can't say the N-word, right? Or to be specific, nigga, right? Now, I ain't got to go into all of the debates about if there's a difference between N-I-G-G-A and N-I-G-G-R-E-R. I mean, I think, most people, if you've been listening to rap for the past 15, 20 years or whatever, you understand at least the difference in the meaning of how you say it, right? So we don't need to go back and debate that part. I'm gonna assume everybody gets that. If you don't, then you don't even watch this. Just skip over this. Go look at something else. So we get that N-I-G-G-A is the more, term of endearment, or at least that's what they like to throw out there, which to me is kind of a myth, but I'll kind of get into that as we go a little bit more. And then, the ER, which is the derogatory racial term, for black people, right? All right. So we get the syntax of it as far as in regards to that. But I want to, and this is why I wanted to record this, because there's a few things I really want to get out. So like, I'm old enough to remember, I grew up in the 80s. So I'm old enough to remember, at least in my family, and a lot of other black families, right? A lot of other black families that I knew. To use that word at all was like cursing, right? I couldn't, around my grandparents, I couldn't use that word. Around my mama, around my aunts, my uncles, if I were to say that, it was immediately looked at as a negative. Even if I said it the N-I-G-G-A, right? Even if I said it in that way, it wasn't looked at as a positive, right? It was looked at as I was saying something bad about that person, right? And even if you go back and watch like media, black people in the 70s and the 80s, typically when it was used in a aggressive or offensive manner, right? I remember when I was in the second grade, a black kid, said to me, "Nigga, please," right? That was grounds to fight. But that's how I was raised. And I know a lot of other black people that are raised very similar. It wasn't, at least for me, until the really late 80s, maybe the 90s, that the word was then used still in a negative, but where, oh, that's my nigga, or, oh yeah, my nigga's over there, where you started to see the word take on more of a affectionate or a more positive spin, right? So this whole myth about the N-word just being as a term of endearment, even the N-I-G-G-A version of it, that's bullshit. If you really break down and study the word, black people didn't start calling themselves that and just immediately take it and be like, oh, this is a term of endearment. Black people call themselves that because they were constantly called that. Like, let's not mince words here. Let's not change history. Original Africans were brought here as slaves, and they were dehumanized. Right? Really think about that. Their entire culture stripped away from them. Their entire language stripped away from them. Everything that they knew from their homeland stripped away. And then you're given a new moniker. Now, of course, originally Niger, right? But this whole with the A thing, that's just dialect. That's just speech patterns. That's just speech patterns. You could take lots of different words, and depending on where you're at, they might say that word differently. But it doesn't change the meaning of the word. If you're in Northeast America, they say floor. Down in the South, they say flow. Oh, pick that up off the flow. Does that mean they're talking about two different things? It's dialect. So let's make that real clear here. This difference that we talk about is new. This is a new thing. This isn't old. This isn't something that all of the former slaves got together and like, well, we're gonna take this word and no. We're just talking about dialect. So let's be real clear there. Now, knowing that, though, knowing how people use the word, and it's very nuanced, I get and I understand that there is a difference in how somebody is saying the word to me, right? I definitely understand that. I remember early on when a lot of Hispanic people that grew up in the same neighborhoods as us started using it. And I even remember their parents looking at them crazy because they were saying the N-word. Right? Not even on some political stuff, but they were just like, you're not black. Why are you calling yourself that? Why are you saying that word to each other? A lot of my Hispanic friends, some of y'all might be watching this, fellow Hispanic rappers, and just you might not even be a rapper. You just might be a Hispanic person that grew up in the hood, just like a lot of us, right? You might remember your abuela looking at you crazy because you said that word, right? So once again, like I'm saying, this whole myth about the N-word being, used differently, this is new. This is new. It took me a while to get comfortable with the idea of a non-black person saying the word. It took me a minute to get comfortable with a black person saying the word to me. And I'm not taking it as an offensive, like that you're trying to offend me. Right? So I got over that. Then I got over Hispanic people using it. And primarily I got over with Hispanic people using it because most Hispanic people I knew were in the trenches right along with us. Right? A lot of us shared the same, especially if you are here in Texas, a lot of us shared the same communities. We would live right next door to each other, right? Because we were both economically deprived. So a lot of times black people and Hispanic people lived in very close quarters to each other. And so as more Hispanic people got into hip hop culture, and if we're keeping it 100, in New York and along the Northeast, Hispanic people were right in the mix with the birth and the growth of hip hop culture from the very beginning. So, because they were our neighbors and they were our confidants and, the people that helped us build this culture, it was easier to accept the word usage from them, right? And I'll be honest with you, it really took me living on the East Coast to get completely comfortable with it. In the late '90s, I lived up in Massachusetts, and I met a lot of Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, um, you know, all sorts of Hispanic people, and some of them were blacker than me, right? My homeboy Mello, his grandmother, straight from Puerto Rico, black as my shirt, spoke nothing but Spanish, right? Didn't know English. That's when I really started to understand the connections between Hispanic culture and black culture, right? And then also, my family in San Antonio, it's a mixed family. So I came to understand Hispanic people using the N-word and Mexican people using the N-word, right? And that's where the nuance of the word really started to expand and grow. So that brings us to now, right? And we know who we know it kind of kicked off with the talk about Jen Lee, but then we've seen a couple other white rappers popping up and they're using the N-word. And it's funny because not too long ago, I had a conversation with a guy I'm very close with. I'm not gonna say his name right now, but a young rapper I'm very close with, and we talked about this because another friend of ours was offended that he was using the word, and I have to say I understood both sides of it, right? I understood why my friend got offended because while he's not my age, black guy, so he got offended that this other person was using the N-word. It was a white person using the N-word. But I also understood where this person was coming from because they were literally raised in the same environment as most of us, right? Raised right in the hood. When you're raised around something, you do emulate the culture that you're raised in. So when this other person was saying the word, they definitely did not mean it in any derogatory way. They did not mean it as an insult. They did not mean it to try to bring me down or to try to talk ill of me being black or my race or anything like that. They were using it just like a lot of people use it in conversation. But I had to also sit down and explain to him, hey, I understand that you feel this is your culture, this is your lifestyle, right? But you also have to understand, being that you were raised in this culture, why a large amount of black people aren't going to like you using this word and are going to be uncomfortable or angry if they hear you using that word, right? As a white person in the culture, if you are not aware of that, if you're not aware of that, it really makes me question your ability to look past yourself. It really makes me question where you're coming from, right? And especially to be so aggressive and blatantly, oh, can't nobody tell me this, that, or the other. And I get it, right? I get it. This is America. Everybody got free speech. You can say what you want to say, right? Cool. But you gotta know that there's gonna be a backlash that's gonna come with you just so wantonly using the word, especially if you're going to get aggressive about it and be like, oh, anybody can come see me for using the word. Really? Really? And you in the hip hop culture and you want to be a rapper, or you are a rapper. Like, really step back and think about the word, right? Because even now, a lot of people share memes and GIFs and different things online. And how positive is the word really used? Right? How positive is the word really used? You know, you'll see memes and stuff like, oh, you know, niggas do this. And it's usually something negative. Right? And yeah, it can be used, you know, oh, that's my nigga, or it can be used in a positive light. But usually that's in personal relationships. That's in, you know, your direct relationships. When you look at the word, how it's used a lot as far as in group stuff or outside, like when we're talking about groups of people or the outside, you know what I'm saying? Like when you're making generalizations about how people act, it's usually not associated in a positive light. So it ain't my place to tell nobody what to say, right? Because I know how to cut shit off. I know how to unfollow. I know how to, you know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing new to me. I just won't listen to you and keep it pushing. But I think it's time for people to really start thinking about it. And I mean black people too. I have worked at times in my life to try not to use the word. Like, I generally do not say it around non-black people because I don't want nobody thinking that they can be comfortable enough to say it to me. Right? And is it a double standard? Sure. I can admit that it's a double standard, but it's a double standard that has a lot of weight. So as a white person, if you're trying to use this word and you're in the hip hop culture and you're using the word, I want you to stop and step back for a second and think about it. Right? For hundreds of years, the word was primarily used as a derogatory insult to a black person that was originally used to dehumanize an entire group of people. To strip away from them being considered a human to them being considered a nigga. And now, just because you're young and you're out here rapping and doing your thing or whatever, and you might have grew up in the culture, and nobody's taking away from, no, I'm not trying to say that, your hardships were less or anything like that. Right? We ain't talking about you on a personal note. But you think that just because you grew up in this environment and, maybe in your little personal circles, that's okay for you to say it amongst your friends, amongst those that know you directly. But just because you grew up in the hood, the entirety of the rest of the culture and the race of black people is supposed to just be like, oh, okay, you grew up in the hood, and give them a pass? Really stop and think about that. And if you really respect this culture and the art of rap and hip hop and all of that stuff, right? If you really respect it, you'll probably stop and check yourself and really think about what you're doing on the larger scale. Because it's more than just about you. Just because you're comfortable and your hood might have gave you a pass doesn't strip away the hundreds of years of oppression and dehumanization that word carries. If black folks have flipped the word around and of using it as a term of endearment, cool. I might still have some issues with it, but okay. All right. If Hispanic people who have deep roots in African culture and have in many ways shared the burden of being dehumanized in many ways, because we're talking about folks that were, and we can't strip this away, we're talking about groups of people that were oppressed by Europeans, white people. If Mexican people had never been conquered by the Spaniards, do you think they'd be speaking Spanish? No. They'd be speaking whatever indigenous language, because I don't know the names of it. I don't know what the Aztecs spoke. I don't know what the Mayans spoke, or the Incans, but they wouldn't be speaking Spanish. They'd be speaking their language. So that's a trauma bond between black people and Hispanic people. So a lot of Hispanic people were given the pass, but even that took a long road. So that, for what it's worth, like I said, I'm not trying to jump on nobody. My thing is to get you to stop and think on a larger perspective here about what you're doing and how you're coming across and why so many black folks is mad about it. Right? And this ain't to just one white rapper. All of you that think it's cool to start using this word and throwing it around. You really need to stop and think about how you're coming across, why you feel so emboldened and privileged that you should be able to say the word just because you grew up around black folks. There's a whole greater history to it that you're just overlooking and choosing to push to the side. For what? For what? So, that's my 2 cents, man. Feel free to comment. Feel free to say whatever you got to say. Hey, I'm all ears. I'm all open for a debate. We can talk about it, right? But I just felt like I had to get that off my chest and really kind of shine some light on this subject a little bit more and get people to really think about, that word and using it and everything else, right? And hey, maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, it's all good. But I guess the final takeaway is, man, you just can't be surprised that a large amount of black people got a problem with you saying the word. And this is to any of my young fellow white rappers, older white rappers. Actually, I had to say the young ones because I ain't never seen this many white rappers getting upset about not being able to say the word, right? And I know a lot of white rappers. I'm not one of them like, white people can't be in the culture. No, that's stupid. But you do got to kind of respect the culture, and if you are part of the culture, you got to understand where it comes from and the birth of it and the meaning of these words and everything else. So, hey man, give it some thought. Tell me what you think. Casino ATX. Peace. I'll let you.